Hello and welcome to Basic Folk. Hello, hi. Hey there, it's Cindy. I'm the host of Basic Folk. Nice to have you here. We have honest conversations with folk musicians on this podcast. And today we are very excited to be talking to Samantha Crain, who had a hell of a time in the summer of 2007. She had just released her album, You Had Me at Goodbye, earlier in the year, and was ready to roll out for a busy schedule of touring the new music. By the end of the summer, she was laid up after experiencing 3 car accidents where she was hit all 3 times. A combination of those crashes and lifelong tendonitis and carpal tunnel syndrome led to her hands literally not working. She was not able to play the guitar or tour. A very dark time set in from being homebound and not being able to play guitar or write songs. Through physical and emotional therapy, she slowly started to heal. She also took this time to document some past trauma by recording herself talking on a tape player. This led to a lot of self-reflection and shedding of old lifelong anxieties. When she was well enough, she began to write songs based on what she had been documenting and processing. This resulted in her new album, A Small Death. We talked about the new album as well as Samantha's very interesting life. A member of the Choctaw First Nation, she values using her native language to modernize the Indigenous experience for herself and other young Native people. We talk about her dad, a Southern Baptist evangelical preacher who would perform music as well as feats of strength at religious tent revivals. She also shared a little about her experience as a weightlifter. Samantha Crain is truly one of a kind. I wish her the best in her continued healing journey and with the new album. We're going to take a listen to a song from the new record before we listen to our conversation with Samantha Crain. This is Pastime from the new album. We'll check it out and then get to our conversation with Samantha Crain on Basic Folk.
Falling in love was a pastime. I practiced every chance I got. If you buying into it, let me co-sign. I've got the best bet on the block. See, it's just the feeling I was waiting for. I know you're talking, but I shut you out. Blacked out on something out of nowhere, and we're not even worried about it. And it feels like, and it feels like, and it feels like you were always there. You were always there.
All right, Samantha Crain, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, you were raised in rural Shawnee, Oklahoma, which I have never been to. I've never been to Oklahoma. So would you be so kind as to give us a sense of what your town is like?
Well, I don't live there anymore. I left pretty quickly when I was about 18. So Shawnee itself isn't super rural, but I grew up sort of in the outskirts and then in a town called Dale. I mean, I say Shawnee isn't rural. It probably would be for anybody that's from a city, but for anybody that's like from or familiar with the general layout of the Midwest, Shawnee's about 20,000 people. So that's like the big city from where we are.
Got it, yeah.
But I mean, I would say from my experience, I didn't, it took me a long time to even get into music or know about music, just because I didn't really have a lot of outlets for figuring out things that I was interested in. I mean, if you weren't into sports or FFA, there was just sort of a lack of, I guess, mentors or teachers or any sort of way to like find out about that stuff. Because this was also sort of like pre-internet being accessible to everybody as well. So I spent a lot of time by myself. I spent a lot of time driving around once I got a car, sometimes before I had my license, because my parents were kind of like a bit laissez-faire, I guess, with how I was raised. But yeah, I think I was a bit aimless as a kid, honestly. And then I sort of slowly started discovering live music by going to some shows in Oklahoma City whenever I got into my teenage years.
How far was that from Shawnee?
It's about 45-minute drive.
Oh, not too bad.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just kind of like go into Oklahoma City, and there was a sort of a DIY punk venue called the Conservatory back then, that I would just go to shows all the time, and just, I think that was my first introduction to seeing that there were people not too much older than me that were making music, and their job was playing shows. So I think that was something that would have never occurred to me.
Right.
That was like a thing that people did.
Isn't it funny to think back about the shows that you went to as a teenager before you like actually knew what music you liked?
Yeah. I went to everything. I would literally, I was like a sponge, you know. I grew up in a really religious family, so a lot of the music that I was introduced to whenever I was growing up was like Christian music. But back then, Christian music was kind of all over the place too. It wasn't just like, I don't really know what it's like now, but I feel like there were like Christian rappers, and there were Christian emo bands, and there were Christian pop stars. I mean, it was kind of like all over the place. I don't think it's like that now, but it was a really and they also toured with mainstream bands too, which is something that like does not happen now.
Right.
And so that was sort of an introduction into other things. It was like the modern day version of like Spotify telling you, you might like this artist if you like this artist. It was just by like going to these little venues and seeing what other band was on tour with whatever band you were watching. That was like the original algorithm.
Right. Yeah. The analog algorithm.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your dad because you talk about him quite a bit, but what was your family structure like growing up? Like who was in your house? Who was in your family?
I mean, it was just like me and my mom and dad and my brother. I'm assuming that you're referring to his like powerlifting and his like music evangelism and like
who is this guy?
It's funny because I think into it now, seeing like the person that I've become as an artist and how many different sort of baskets you have to have your eggs in order to like make a living in the world of being a creative person.
Right.
It's kind of funny because he was sort of like that. It wasn't really specifically geared towards the art world like I am, but he literally anything to like make a measly buck, you know. It was like he would figure out how to do it. But so yeah, I guess first and foremost, he is, I guess, still a competitive powerlifter, which powerlifting is like sort of the scrappy underbelly of weightlifting, which is like what you see in the Olympics and stuff. It's sort of like the thing that was grown out of a bunch of like sweaty dudes working out in each other's garages like in the 50s and 60s. And so he competed in that sport, and it was like a family thing. Like his dad did it too, and his sister and his brother. And
you did it for a while, right?
Yeah, it was something that I did in my childhood. It's sort of like if you have a really specific body type, it makes you like kind of just naturally good at it because of like low center of gravity and a bunch of weird like stuff. And we just happen to like have that as a family, I guess.
Wow.
But I did it for a while, and it wasn't necessarily because I liked doing it. It was just one of those, like, it wasn't really an option, I would say. Like, it was just, like, most things that, like, parents make their kids do because they think it's, like, instilling something into them or something.
Like soccer or piano lessons.
Mine was just really weird and, like, made sure that I had no friends because I was, like, a power lifter as, like, a girl in a small town in Oklahoma, so.
That sounds like a one-way ticket to popularity.
It definitely was not.
Your relationship with Oklahoma seems like it's been like pretty complicated for you. So you live in Norman, Oklahoma, but when you were growing up, you felt like you didn't fit in, but you also had like a desire to belong there, and it was extremely Christian and conservative. And you had a really great quote. You said, "I feel welcome and alienated all at once," about your state of Oklahoma. But despite that, how did you land on accepting Norman and accepting Oklahoma as your home?
I mean, it is a really complicated relationship that I have. Some of that has to do with me being a Native American and knowing the history of that in this state. Some of that has to do with me having a certain set of values in terms of, I would say, I don't know, like me having a certain set of like social values, I guess, and those not necessarily being the widespread opinions around here, but also me feeling 100% like it's me whenever I go, like just the other day I was out like location scouting for this music video, and I was just driving around in my pickup truck, and there were like cornfields, and I had on my like camo t-shirt, and like my dog is in the car with me, and I am like quintessentially in touch with that like hillbilly that I am. And there is something really that I've always like struggled with, not like feeling like I should just be able to like, you know, slide right into the groups around here, but like not really knowing what to do because the people that are sort of the artists around here are very like anti those people and separate themselves, and then the people that are, I guess, you know, the townies or whatever, they don't share the same values as me. So it's just one of those like weird things that I've constantly found myself in. And I guess the reason why Norman kind of works for me, I mean, I moved around a ton in my 20s to like different places, just kind of searching for some sort of place that maybe would feel more like it clicked better for me. But I just, honestly, as much as I love traveling and touring, I couldn't really find that like any more than I could here in Oklahoma. And I think Norman works like that because you kind of have a strange little community of people that I think also kind of feel the same way as me. Like they really, really resonate with their Oklahoma-ness, but they also have like a set of values that's like a bit different from maybe the rest of the state. There's also just sort of a community nature of this town that I really thrive off of, that I haven't really been able to experience in some other places, just in terms of it being small enough where I can like know people and run into people, but it also being big enough that like it has resources for me as a person that like needs to get to an airport or needs to find certain, I don't know what I need, but it just
I find it here.
I feel like it's like big enough to where I can get things when I need it or whatever, but it's small enough to where it doesn't feel like overwhelming, I guess.
So you're a member of the Choctaw First Nation. And I really love the way you talk about Indigenous people creating new traditions with their native languages, in that you feel Indigenous languages, if those can be furthered and like modernized, then it's a real tool of empowerment for younger people who, based off of like society, like incorrect societal presentations of Native people, they don't feel quote unquote like Indian enough. So rather than like quote yourself back to you, I just would love to hear about your experience with your language, and also like the emotional process of learning the language. Particularly, I heard you talk a little bit about learning from Dora, and how you drew this conclusion of using it to help change the narrative.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of what you said is sort of my outlook on the importance of language, of using it as a tool to, I think, to give younger Indigenous people the confidence to claim their Indianness, even though they kind of, for the most part, I think, have grown up, especially like the urban Indian, the Indian that like doesn't live on a reservation or isn't, or didn't come from a background that was like 100% steeped in tradition, giving them sort of the confidence to come out on the plus side of that like struggle with identity and with authenticity. I think my friend Tommy Orange wrote this book called There that is an amazing book, and everyone should read it. And it was a on the bestseller list like a few years back. But he had the whole point of that book is the feeling of like the urban Indian kind of existing in, all the time being reminded of this like buried ancestral land, this like unreturnable covered memory. It's sort of like being constantly reminded that like the federal government was like trying to erase Native Americans, that everybody thinks that Native Americans don't exist anymore, that sort of thing. And so I think those individuals especially, having language as a tool to sort of reclaim that identity, even when they're surrounded by a world that sort of yells that they don't exist anymore, I think is really powerful. And I mean, even if you can't get to a place where you can learn the language, I'm lucky because the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, language has been a huge, it's been really high on their list of like important things over the past few years. They've like really, really worked hard on implementing language programs and making them accessible to the people within the tribe. So I'm really lucky that it's like easy to get that education of the language. But a lot of tribes only have, 1, 5, 10, 15 speakers left. I think, preserving those languages is important, but even more important is being able to kind of claim anything that you do as an Indigenous person as a continuation of the Indigenous tradition. Not that it has to meet some sort of standard for like what Native things look like or what Native behavior is. Like you yourself are a continuation of that heritage, whether or not but that's like a hard thing. That's a hard confidence to be able to give yourself when you've been told something different for generations. So for me, I think language is like a huge tool of confidence in that way.
You have labeled yourself a stubborn learner, an autodidact. that thrives on self-teaching. You taught yourself guitar at 17. What has been your experience like of learning? Like, how did you discover that, and what benefits and disadvantages do you think you experience because of this very fact?
I would say advantages is that because I have this like stubbornness about like the way that I learn things, I can kind of like get started on stuff pretty quickly. Like it doesn't, I'm not necessarily, I mean, I guess it's not good in some ways, but I can kind of like learn a few skills and then like make the thing that I want to make pretty quickly. The bad downside is kind of something I deal with now, which is like improper holding of the guitar and improper postures of the guitar have led to like a lot of the pain that I have in my arms and hands now. You know, I think that there are pros and cons to kind of going about teaching yourself stuff and then learning from someone else. I think you just kind of have to like discover whatever makes you happy, I guess, or whatever serves your goals and focuses, I guess. But I think for me, it's largely been good. I'm so like, I'm all about like efficiency. Like I recently saw like the inner workings of like the background of a TV show. I was like an extra in a TV show, so I got to see like how many people work on the set of a TV show, and it was I was like, I couldn't believe it. There was like somebody to literally do, I mean, anything that you could possibly think of, you know. And for someone like me who thrives off like efficiency and like communication, I was just like, this is like a nightmare to me. But I've talked to people that work on those sorts of things, and they're like, there's a reason for all of that. That's safety issues and like, so I get that, but I think I'm just a bit like scrappy, and so I just kind of like to have an idea and try to execute it as well as I can at that moment. For whatever reason that is, I think it might just be I'm addicted to that that feeling of having an idea, getting it out, and then moving on to the next thing. I'm just like kind of addicted to that process of and, you know, I've tried to, like, fight with that a little bit and slow down when it comes to, like, creating and things like that. Try to get better at certain things. But I think it, like, happens naturally. What you do is you end up finding the parts of it that you're really interested in, and you give your attention to those things just naturally anyways. And then the other things, I think you figure out, you find people in your life that can do those things for you. I think it's like, that's kind of what a community is built out of, I guess.
I'd like to work on a project with you. It sounds,
all of the
I like that.
Those like personality tests that you take and things, like the Enneagram or the like Myers-Briggs and stuff, I always get marked as the architect, which to me I know, like, to other people it sounds like a positive thing, but to me it just makes me think of, like, the person in the corner that's, like, yelling directions but, like, doesn't know how to do anything themselves. And that's kind of, I mean, it's not too far off from, like, from what I do, I guess. I kind of, like, have an idea and I want to get it done, and even if I can't do it, you know, it's going to get done.
I respect it.
Oh, man.
In the summer of 2017, some things happened to you, and you like to say that you are a good driver. You got into 3 car accidents, and all 3 times you were run into. So a combination of those crashes and some lifelong tendonitis and carpal tunnel like led to your hands literally not working. You were homebound, and it seems like you took this time to document some past trauma, which I thought was really interesting in the fact that, like, you weren't writing songs. You were just kind of, like, documenting what you were feeling, what was going on. What was that process like for you in, like, recording yourself talking about these issues that you just, like, kind of put off forever? And, like, what did it feel like versus setting out to write songs?
Well, honestly, I think it was really important for me because I think a lot of times when we get sort of caught up, and I mean, artists are not, what's the word? They're not excluded from this, which is, you get caught up in like a cycle of productivity or of what the next thing is, and you just kind of like forget to process things as they're happening to you, I think. Whether that be because you don't want to deal with the emotions of it, or it's just too painful, or whatever that reason is. Everybody has their own thing. But I think that that's kind of that was where I found myself is, I found myself in a position where physically I couldn't do my job. Like my hands weren't working, so I couldn't play instruments and I couldn't tour, and I couldn't really do much work at all. With that being said, not having usage of my hands. But what I did have time to do is think. And it's a really easy thing to run away from whenever all you have time to do is think and process things. It can be a really, really dark well to go down, I think, depending on how much time has passed that you've been kind of like pushing things down and down and down. And for me, the documenting of those things, like on my voice recorder, was a tool that like my therapist at the time recommended. So that way I would, because I was always like showing up to therapy sessions and not knowing what to talk about. She was like, just keep a voice recording so that way you like know what you were thinking about that week, like what was bothering you. So it was that, but then it turned into this thing where I would just go on these long walks, and anything that came into my brain that was like really uncomfortable for me, or I couldn't quite like get out of my head, I would just think about it and talk about it to its end, sort of like I guess in a really like Buddhist way, like letting it pass through me, like experiencing it fully. I could be getting that wrong. I don't actually know much about Buddhism, but I think that that's kind of like
Sounds
the
right.
principle of, yeah. And so, yeah, I think I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of songs. I was just like trying to heal, honestly. I was just trying to like get to a point where I wasn't just in constant emotional and physical pain. So I think with any sort of like able-bodied person, you just forget that there's like things that you just like take for granted, in terms of even escaping your own thoughts. You can just like physically get up and go somewhere, go out to a bar, go to a friend's house, that sort of thing. But because I was just sort of trapped, I guess, I had no choice to kind of deal with this stuff, which I think kind of prepped me for COVID, honestly, because I think that's like what a lot of people kind of find themselves in that situation right now, where they're just sort of trapped at home and alone with their thoughts way more than what they're used to. But I think what that led to, just from a creative standpoint, is because I didn't really know that I was processing things that would end up being songs, I get something that is way more honest and way more thoughtful, way more thought through than maybe stuff that I've written in the past. Something that hopefully is a bit more universal as well, just because I spent so much time circling a lot of these stories and thoughts and traumas around. And so the fact that they turned into songs, I guess, in the long run, wasn't planned. And sometimes when you're not planning on something becoming a certain format, it allows you to kind of like step out of your preconceived like ideas of what something should be within that format, I think.
Also, it sounds like in that period of time, you kind of went through a period of searching to find your identity apart from like being a musician. Since you can't play music, you can't write songs. What did you discover about yourself and your like life's purpose while this is all happening?
I mean, I think the life's purpose thing, what ended up happening is I ended up moving away from that idea of life's purpose, I think. I think my whole existence, my whole adult life anyways, I have always thought of myself or what I was doing in the world as moving towards, I guess, something that would like make a mark on society or something like that. And I think what I ended up landing on through getting to know like different aspects of myself and kind of getting to know myself from scratch again is that really it's just about like, well, for me anyways, I find much more joy in my existence, and not just joy, but I think contentedness is probably the right word. If I just focus from day to day on, and not necessarily giving myself some sort of template to live up to each day as well.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, just kind of understanding that each day I'm like capable of something different, and that could be from a Western capitalist point of view. It could be very productive, or the thing I could be capable of doing that day is resting, or the thing that I could be capable of doing that day is helping someone else achieve something. And I find that it's not so much about like a life's purpose as it is, I guess, a day's purpose. So that was something that was like a huge, I think, change for me during this time, because honestly, I mean, during this time I didn't really think that I was going to get to make another record. So like I had to focus just day to day on finding some sort of sense of contentedness with or without music or creating even, which is kind of like a weird thing because I really thrive off of projects and doing things like that. So I had to find the things that I liked or wanted to spend my time doing that didn't necessarily depend on producing, I guess, things, which is really good because now when I find myself in, what people would call writer's block or find myself overwhelmed by creative projects, it's really easy for me to pivot into other things without I don't get depressed like I used to. I think I used to deal pretty heavily. Well, I don't want to get into that because that's kind of like that's a difficult topic, and I don't mean from my side. I just don't want it to make it sound like I've discovered the the like solution for mental illness or something. Mm-hmm. But I think for me personally, it's made it a lot easier for me to just like deal with day-to-day ups and downs because of that.
How do you feel or reflect about your former self after all this?
It's quite interesting because this album has, I guess, just in its nature, it's a bit nostalgic in that it's like looking back before you can move forward sort of thing, dealing with things in your past before you can move forward. But I think what it has in turn made me is sort of less nostalgic, more concerned with the present, not necessarily even the future, but just more concerned with the present rather than my past, because I've always like naturally been a pretty nostalgic person, over romanticizing things of my past without like seeing the struggles in them or whatever that is. And I think that can be kind of limiting for an artist to always like fall back on nostalgia as like the creative process. So I haven't really thought too much about my past self since the record being done, because it was sort of my my catharsis. It was my way of like coming into this new, I guess, reincarnation of myself or something. But I feel like sorry for her in a lot of ways, that she could have expressed a lot more, I think, if she had like dealt with some of this stuff earlier. But I also know that like the body and the mind tends to only deal with things successfully whenever it's ready. So there's really nothing that I can say in terms of like, if only you would have done this earlier,
Right.
you know.
Right.
I tend to be a slow learner, I think. So I tend to, because I'm like that stubborn, like autodidact you're talking about, sometimes it takes someone telling me something a few times before I actually believe them, I think. So, and I think it's all based on, you know, you're not going to absorb things until you're like actually ready to do something about them, I think. So I don't know. I don't think too much about it. It's interesting to like sing songs that I wrote back then, or think about my creative process from before this time, because it seems it's like hard to remember. I talk about this a little like in some of the songs on the record, like Joey and High Horse, like them kind of being about that feeling of you having like lived all of these different lives, and sometimes you like remember something because you know that it happened to you, but you can't like remember it innately. Like you can't put yourself in that place and say like, yeah, I remember what that felt like. And I feel that that's a bit the position that I feel right now. I feel really like untethered by a lot of my past life right now. So I find that to be a good thing. And so it's really hard to talk about. And I don't mean hard, like emotionally hard. It's just like, I actually don't, like, it's a bit of amnesia almost. Like,
Right.
I don't really remember what it was like. And I'm okay with that, because I think it helps me like it helps me keep like my momentum like in the present, which is nice.
After the accidents and regaining your strength through physical therapy, how has your guitar playing changed, and how has that affected your writing?
So I still am not like 100%. Actually, I don't even think I'm like really 50% in terms of how long I can play the guitar, or like what I can do on it, like as I was before. Because I do still like struggle with that. Like it's at a manageable level now, but it's still, I still struggle with pain there. And so I've really moved into writing in open tunings a lot more, because it's a bit easier on my hands.
Is it just like I don't play guitar, so I don't know like what the difference would be between open tuning and not open tuning?
Oh, so for example, like if I'm playing in a standard tuning, like there would be a lot of like bar chords, which I like bar chords. I like the sound of them, where you'd have to like press down, like with one finger, you'd press down every string on the guitar, and then your remaining 3 fingers would make a chord behind that.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically just like your whole hand is like
yeah.
completely constricted.
You're like white knuckling the neck.
And the reason why that is for me is because I like the sound of a bar chord. I like the voicing of it. There are ways to make chords without bar chords, but the voicings just don't really like respond. I don't respond to those voicings as much. But with open tunings, you're basically like you're tuning the strings to make a chord already whenever you strum them.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why. I just like strummed that, and it's in a standard tuning. But yeah, you're just tuning the strings to where everything is already a chord,
Right.
even if I wasn't holding anything down. And then you can kind of make things just by pressing things like a finger or 2 at a time up and down the neck. So your hand is kind of constantly getting a break every time you
Right.
like pluck a string.
So if you were to play a show, you would need, I mean, in a perfect world, you probably would have like 10 guitars and 10 different tunings.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the perfect world. I kind of have a joke, like, in my shows because I do all of the tuning changes in between songs because I just have one guitar. Because my guitar that I have is, like, not super cheap, so it's, like, hard to have multiple guitars as,
beautiful.
like, a working musician. But Jeff Tweedy of Wilco, like, when he plays a solo show, he has like 7 or 8 guitars just like in a semicircle behind him.
Yeah.
And they're all like in the different tunings or whatever that he needs. And I have a joke about like that being like heaven to me. That would be amazing. But yeah, I've just had to get really good at changing tunings in between songs quickly, which has led to me telling a lot of stories, some entertaining and some a bit long-winded, I'm afraid. But in terms of playing live, I kind of have to strategically plan, you know, the order of songs for like how much one song hurts my hand versus what I can play after that. So like there's a song on the new record called Garden Dove that is actually like my hand hurts so bad just in the first verse of playing it. Like it's really hard for me to play because it's all bar chords the entire song, and I didn't really think of that whenever I recorded it, the fact that I would have to play it live. But after that, I just go for something that's just like a really low-key open tuning song, so that way I have like 4 minutes for my hand to recover before I have to move on to the next thing. But it's an interesting thing. I wish I could convey that to everybody that like has to see me play or has to like every promoter that books me, because there's like reasons why I'm like I can only play an hour. Like it's not because I'm a diva. It's because like I'm like trying to, you know, for longevity here. So
Right. Okay, I want to hear about basket weaving and Marty.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, I'll talk about basket weaving first because I don't have like a whole lot to say about it, which is it basically is just I've wanted to learn how to basket weave my whole life. It's been something that's like it's super important in my tribe. It's super important. It's always been something that I've loved. Like anytime I go to like art museums or craft fairs or anything, I'm just like so obsessed with baskets. I've always loved them. I've always assumed it'd just be like way too hard for me to do and require too much patience or something like that. But yeah, during lockdown, I just like dove in, and so now I like weave baskets, which is cool. It's really peaceful and really meditative, and
It's not hard on your hands or anything.
no, surprisingly, the movements are more like, I think are less like finger intensive, and it's more like I can just kind of like move a reed out of its way with like my whole hand. So like I could do it with mittens on, really, like you know, it's just kind of, it's at least the kind that I do. I'm sure that there is some that's a bit more like finger, tiny motor movement intensive, but the ones that I do are more just like basic flat weaving. So it doesn't have a lot of pressure. Plus, you could just like take a break. It's not like a big deal. It's not like you're on a time crunch to finish a basket or anything.
You're not performing a concert
No.
basket weaving.
Yeah. So I've just gotten really into that. And then Marty is my like animal rescue dog that I got at the beginning of lockdown. I tend to be like a pretty what's the word? Like reclusive person, I guess. Like I've always been kind of a homebody, puttering around the house, like don't need like a whole lot of human interaction, or so I thought. I think the reason I thought that is because I was pairing this like really quiet home life with a really active like social life in terms of touring and, you know, interviews and things like that. And so because once I got home and it was just quiet and I was alone and it was, I couldn't see anybody, and it just like started getting, I reached like the end of the spectrum of my solitude, I guess. And so I adopted Marty and I'm like obsessed with him. He's the best. I think it's been really good for me to just like every morning, just for my like quality of life, I think like every morning I have to wake up and feed him and take him for a walk. I don't have time to like wallow in bed about like how depressed I am that my life isn't going the way that I would like it to be in the year of an album release or something like that. So, and I think for people that are, I don't know, for someone of my disposition, it's really nice just to have like a dog that gives you like unrequited or just like not unrequited
Unconditional
love, yeah. But he's the best, and we just walk all the time.
How big is he?
He's actually pretty small. He's only like 30 pounds. He's full grown. He's a super mutt. I finally got like the DNA test on him because I was just like, I have no idea what kind of dog this is. And he's like part mini Aussie, part pit bull, part Staffordshire Terrier, part bulldog, part German Shepherd, part Burger Picard or some dog that I'm not familiar with. He's just like a crazy combination of all of these things, but
Nice.
he's good. He's scrappy, but like lovable, and yeah, he's good.
Sounds like you got a good match.
Yeah, perfect
The two
match
of
for
you.
sure.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, can we do the lightning round?
Ooh, yeah, sure.
Yes. All right. Here we go. Samantha Crain. What is the first song you learned on the guitar?
Dandelions by Five Iron Frenzy,
Wow.
which is a Christian ska band.
On brand. Very on brand.
brand.
Yeah. Oh, no, off brand. Okay. What is your karaoke song?
The Belinda Carlisle song, I can't think of it now all of a sudden. Or Always and Forever by Donna Lewis. I love you always,
that's a
ever,
good
near
one.
and far. Yeah, for some reason my mind is blanking on the Belinda Carlisle one.
Did you know that Donna Lewis song set a record in the 90s for being the most played song on radio ever?
I believe it. It's like I feel like I listen to it every day of my childhood.
Yeah. It's a golden hit.
For sure.
What is your coffee order?
My coffee order this is something that I've recently gotten into, is a sparkling cold brew. So it's like cold brew with sparkling water.
Wow.
All mixed in. It's great.
It's intriguing.
It's like coffee soda. It's weird.
Wow.
But it's great.
What is your favorite junk food?
Favorite junk food is pizza.
First album you bought with your own money?
It was probably the Spice Girls record. That whatever that was called. Spice World?
Spice
No,
World.
I don't. Yeah, okay.
Or was it Spice Up Your Life?
It was whatever all of the first hits were off of. I don't want to be and all of that.
What a magical time.
Spice Up Your Life? Yeah.
What is your first concert?
First concert was DC Talk, Jennifer Knapp, and the W's.
These
So it
are
was a
Christian
bands, yeah. But mega names in the world.
Right.
So anybody that grew up in that in that world would know what I'm talking about.
I recognize Jennifer Knapp, I think.
Yeah, she was like the first like lesbian Christian singer-songwriter.
Yes.
She was like the Christian world answer to like Alanis Morissette and Ani DeFranco, sort of.
Last book you read?
Miss Everything is what it's called.
That's convenience, right in front of you.
Yeah, it's like right there. I just put it on the shelf. It's just like a, beach read.
Cool.
Pretty low impact.
Flying or invisibility?
Flying.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Neither. Like, I don't care.
Okay, what about this one? Lord of the Rings or Narnia?
Oh, dang, that's hard. I think the nostalgia might be too hard for me with this one, so I'm going to have to go Narnia.
The Christian one.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Where is the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
I would have to say Ghent, Belgium.
Oh, nice. I have not been to Ghent, but
Really, just Belgium
Yeah.
in general is just so beautiful.
my friend
Yeah.
lives there. She's a fiddle player. Sorry, I just get very excited. A lot of good bread, a lot of good beer in
Yeah.
Belgium. Yeah,
And a lot of beautiful old buildings.
nice. Well, Samantha Crain, thank you so much for doing the lightning round and being on Basic Folk and telling us about Marty the dog.
Of course.
New record is
Yeah,
awesome.
if anyone wants to see more pictures of Marty, I post them on my Instagram regularly.
Cool. I will put one on the website too so people can see.
Cool.
Yeah, I hope you get up to 75% and then 100%. And thanks for making this record. It's really awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I had a great time making it.
Basic Folk this week produced by Laura McCarthy. Our business manager is Lindsay Myers. Alex Stanton of Townspeople does our music. American Songwriter Podcast Network. We are so proud to be a part of that podcast family. I'm Cindy House, the host of Basic Folk. You can find all of the episodes at my website, cindyhouse.net, or where you get your podcasts. Hope you are hanging in there. Miss you so much. Thank you for listening. It's just like so good to see you. Okay, bye.